Mr. Smith went to the doctor's office to collect his wife's test results. The receptionist told him, "I'm sorry, sir, but there has been a bit of a mix-up, and we have a problem. When we sent the samples from your wife to the lab, the samples from another Mrs. Smith were sent as well, and we are now uncertain which one is your wife's. Frankly, that's either bad or terrible." Mr. Smith asked, "What do you mean?" The receptionist replied, "Well, one Mrs. Smith has tested positive for Alzheimer's disease and the other for AIDS. We can't tell which is your wife." Mr. Smith exclaimed, "That's terrible. Can we do the test over?" The receptionist replied, "Normally, yes. But you have an HMO, and they won't pay for these expensive tests more than once." "Well, what am I supposed to do now?" asked Mr. Smith. The receptionist replied, "The doctor recommends that you drop your wife off in the middle of town. If she finds her way home, don't sleep with her." A man walks into a quiet bar and orders a cold beer. He takes the beer over to a table and sits down. After a few sips of his beer, he hears a small voice say, "Nice shoes." He looks around, but he is the only one in the bar except the bartender, who is occupied cleaning the other end of the bar. The man shrugs it off and goes back to his drink. A few minutes later, another small voice says, "Nice shirt." Again, the man looks around but can see nobody. Concerned that his mind is playing tricks on him, he is now on guard, listening for any reoccurrences. After a few minutes, a third small voice says, "Nice pants." This time, he is sure it is not his imagination, so he goes up to the bartender and tells him what has happened. "Oh yeah, that happens all the time," says the bartender, pointing to the small bowl on the guy's table. "It's the peanuts. They're complimentary, too." A man was on his way home from a party when he was pulled over by a police officer. As the officer approached the vehicle, he noticed a large number of knives in the back seat. Looking at the driver, he asked, "Sir, do you have a good reason for needing all those large knives?" Smiling, the driver said, "Why, yes, I juggle them." Realizing the officer was giving him a skeptical look, the driver said, "Officer, with your permission, I'd be more than glad to give you a demonstration." Cautiously, the officer stepped back and said, "All right, but you'd better be telling the truth." Soon, the man was on the side of the road, tossing the knives high into the air with ease. Two old men happened to drive by, and both gazed in astonishment. One of the men looked at the other and said, "Sure, I am glad I gave up drinking. These sobriety tests are getting ridiculous." 3. One day, Grandpa was watching Junior play with an earthworm. Grandpa said, "Junior, I will give you $10 if you can put that worm back down in its little hole." The kid thinks and thinks, then runs into the house and returns with a can of hairspray. He sprays the worm all over, and as it gets stiff, he stuffs it down into the hole. Grandpa gives the boy $10. The next day, Grandpa comes out to where Junior is playing and gives the boy $20. The boy looked up in confusion and asked, "What's this for?" Grandpa smiles and says, "That's from Grandma." 4. So an older couple is discussing the inevitable matter of death. The wife asks her husband, "If I die before you do, will you remarry?" To which the husband replies, "Well, I don't want to be lonely for the rest of my life, so yes." The wife then asks, "What about the house? Will you live in the same house?" And the husband says, "Well, I suppose, it's already paid for." The wife, getting a little protective, asks, "And what about my car? Will she drive my car?" The husband says again, "Well, it's already paid for." The wife, annoyed at this point, shoots, "What about my golf clubs?" And the husband says, "Oh no, she's left-handed." 5. Grandpa's 100th birthday party was not a huge success. The family wheeled him in his chair out onto the lawn for a picnic. When he slowly started to lean to the right, his daughter stuffed a pillow on his right side to prop him up. A bit later, he started leaning to the left. His son straightened him up and stuffed a pillow on his left side. Soon, he started tilting forward. This time, his other son caught him and tied a pillow around his waist. A few minutes later, his grandson arrived. He said, "Hey, Grandpa, how's life treating you?" "Terrible," he said. "They won't let me fart." 6. An older couple is driving across the country when they get pulled over by a cop. The husband is driving. "Sir, do you have any idea how fast you were going?" says the police officer. "What did he say?" The man's wife screams at him. "We got pulled over for speeding," man yells back at his wife. She nods in understanding. "May I see your license, please?" the police officer asks the driver. "What did he say?" The wife again screams at the driver. "He wants to see my license," the man explains back to his wife. She again nods in understanding. The man hands the officer his license, and a smile spreads across the officer's face. "Tallahassee, Florida? I had the worst of my life there," the officer chuckles. "What did he say?" the woman yells again. The man looks at the officer and then looks at his wife and shouts back, "He says he thinks he knows you." 7. A nasty and mean-looking trucker came into a truck stop cafe and placed his order. He said, "I want 3 flat tires, a pair of headlights, and a pair of running boards." The brand-new blonde waitress, not wanting to appear stupid, went to the kitchen and said to the cook, "This guy out there just ordered 3 flat tires, a pair of headlights, and a pair of running boards. What does he think this place is, an auto parts store?" "No," the cook said. 3 flat tires mean 3 pancakes. A pair of headlights is 2 eggs sunny side up, and a pair of running boards are 2 slices of crisp bacon." "Oh, okay," said the blonde. She thought about it for a moment and then spooned up a bowl of baked beans and gave it to the customer. The trucker asked, "What are the beans for, Blondie?" She replied, "I thought while you were waiting for the flat tires, headlights, and running boards, you might as well fill up on gas." 8. 3 engineering students were gathered together, discussing the possible designers of the human body. One said, "It was a mechanical engineer. Just look at all the joints." Another said, "No, it was an electrical engineer. The nervous system has many thousands of electrical connections." The last said, "Actually, it was a civil engineer. Who else would run a toxic waste pipeline through a recreational area?" 9. A nun in Japan coming home to the US is at the airport and has some time to kill. She sees a fortune-telling machine and decides to see what it has to say. She deposits her money, and the card comes out and says, "You are a nun, age 31, and you have gas." She knows she does have gas, so she goes to the restroom. She comes back to the fortune-telling machine and tries again. The card comes out and says, "You are a nun, age 31, and you still have gas." She goes back to the restroom again. She returns to the fortune-telling machine and tries again. The card comes out and says, "You are a nun, age 31, and you have been farting around and missed your flight."